BookTube, it's Missy, and today I'm here to do a review for you guys on all of the books that I have read since January. Now, I haven't read a lot, I have to admit. I've been getting more into reading in the past month, like a little bit before the quarantine started. I was starting to really rev up and like really want to make videos again, and I was like writing down ideas and I was starting to read more. So yeah, let's just get started. I think my videos are going to be all over the place until I get like back into the swing of things. So I didn't do like a 2020 what I want to do this year yet. I do have that as an idea that I've written down. But I just, you know, I've been on here since 2014, and I was pretty consistent and following like what everybody else was doing on BookTube, and I feel more comfortable with the old school way than trying to come up with new material. And I know that is boring, but I'm not very creative. I do have a series that I want to try and start, but I need to I want to read the books before I make the video and then see how that works. And if that works good, then I'll continue doing it that way, or I could just make the video, share the books that I want to read for that, and then follow up later on. But the thing is with me, I feel like I make these TBRs, or I make things that I want to read, and then I slowly trickle through those books, but I tend to like flop, and then I'll pick up a different book, and then that book never gets read, and then you guys are waiting like, hey, what happened to that book I was really interested in learning about and you never even read it? And I feel bad about that. So I want you guys to grab a snack, get a drink. It could be non-alcoholic. I have an alcoholic beverage here. It is 11 p.m. at night, and let's get started. So this is going to be super boring for people who don't like middle grade or children's books. So I will leave a timestamp when I get to like more adult types of books if you are just not interested, and these will go really quickly because it is part of a series. So yeah, do you guys remember watching Napoleon Dynamite? If you haven't seen it, you really need to. I mean, we're all stuck at home right now anyway. You might as well watch some funny stuff. We do own that movie, and I had my kids watch it about a month ago, and they really thought it was hilarious. But what I really like is at the beginning of the video, it shows you like the people who are performing, or the actors in the movie. It'll talk about the director and the actors and, you know, all those people that they need to talk about in the beginning of the movie. But they put it on like food. So they'll have the name written in like mustard or something. And they're all on like little like cafeteria trays, and the backgrounds are all different. I thought, ah, that is so cute. I wish I could do that. Like, I wish I had enough accessories in order to go along with the books that I read. So that way I could create these cute little like setups for each book as a transition to my review videos. If you guys have any ideas on how to do that, that would be wonderful. And by the way, the video that I posted a few days ago, there was a copyright claim on it, and normally when I get a copyright claim, they say, oh, don't worry about it, you know, it's not that big of a deal, especially since none of my videos are monetized. So, you know, they're just letting me know, hey, this video has a little tiny bit of a song that is, you know, not yours. So you're using it, but just know that if you are monetized, we're going to take some money from it. The other day, I got the first, like, copyright claim where they actually didn't post my video in some countries, and the United States was one of those countries. And I'm thinking, dang, Adele, I literally had maybe 6 seconds of your song in my video, and you're trying to keep it from being shown everywhere. Like, and it wasn't even like music, it was just like the instrument section. Like, come on. Literally, like, it's not that big of a thing. People get to put like little bits of TV shows. Like, why isn't that copyrighted? I don't understand why I did that. So I really, this video is just going to be all over the place, but I really want to have like a professional kind of intro to my videos instead of like my little dream scenes background with like a little bit of music. I just don't know how to do any of that. I don't know how to do any digital animation. I don't know how to go about doing any of that, and I don't know how expensive it is to purchase for somebody else to create it for me. But I don't want it to look like other YouTubers, because a lot of them have like this watercolor thing going on where they'll have like their cartoon character coming in through the screen, and then it's got like this cutesy little background music that's created specifically for them. So I don't know. We'll see how it goes. Maybe I'll just only use classics for the duration of my time here on YouTube, and then I don't ever have to worry about copyrights. But I do like to share with you guys the music that is inspiring me at the moment, and it stinks that I can't do that anymore. Maybe I'll just make like a playlist, or I'll just leave a video, like a music video down below in the comments, or not the comments, but like my description box, letting you know what I'm listening to right now. And then you guys can check out the music from there. I don't know. Anyways, let's get on with the actual reviews. So, the first part here is the rest of Captain Underpants. Now, I'm going to start with Captain Underpants because this is like the first series that Dave Pilkey created. And there is 12 books in the Captain Underpants series. I fully am wholeheartedly in love with this series. And if you guys haven't read Captain Underpants, I don't know the age group that people are watching me, so I don't know what you would like and what you wouldn't like, but I can tell you this: if you have children and you think that Captain Underpants might be too young or not, like, vocabulary wise not high enough for your child, this has a very high Lexile rating, and the vocabulary used in here is pretty high. I would say that this is really good for 3rd, 4th, 5th graders, even 6th grade. It talks about a lot of stuff in here. So I really enjoy the vocab. I like the characters. I like the morals of the story. It's a lot of fun to read. So I read 1 through 5 in 2019 to my kids, and then so I read 6 through 12 in January and February. So this one here is Captain Underpants and the Big Bad Battle of the Bionic Booger Boy, Part 1, The Night of the Nasty Nostril Nuggets. Now this takes place where our protagonist, Sneedly, why can't I ever think of his Melvin? Melvin Sneedly is really jealous of George and Harold. They're always having fun, and he doesn't have any friends. But he's not just jealous because they're always in the thick of things. He's upset because it's like he's making a mockery of learning. Like, Melvin is definitely into school and doing everything you're supposed to, and so he tattles on them constantly because they're always messing up school. He's kind of like Hermione, but in the boy version. Like, he just really wants to be good at school, and Harold and George are always like doing shenanigans. So finally, he gets his comeuppance in this book, where he is able to turn himself into this disgusting boogery creature. So I'll show you some pictures there. He created a and I haven't read this in a few, but he created this thing. Look how gross. He created this thing, and somehow the machine that he was using to transform, like he was trying to get something like super smart into him, but there was a little booger on the mechanism that transferred one thing to the other. So he became like this creature that is all boogery. So anyways, I don't want to spend too much time per book. So this one was super funny. I really liked it. And then we have the sequel to that, which is part 2, The Revenge of the Ridiculous Robo-Boogers. It's so hilarious. So basically, George and Harold, if you don't even know anything about Captain Underpants, they're in the 4th grade, and they're always getting in trouble, like I said. And so one day, their principal, Mr. Krupp, brings them into his office, and he says, you know, I am just so sick and tired of you kids, and I'm going to make it so that way you guys are separated. You're no longer allowed to be in the same class together. I'm going to have all your teachers sign this paper. I'm going to tell your parents, yada, yada. And then so the boys panic, because they're like, oh my gosh, in a 4th grade brain, they're thinking, if I am not in the same class with you, we'll never be friends again, because our lives will just change, the paths will be different. And so they have this hypnotic ring that they use on their principal. Now, you know, it's one of those cereal box plastic doodad things, and they're thinking, we really hope this works, but there's no way this plastic ring can, like, hypnotize their teacher. But it just so happens with their spunk and their kid hope, it works, and they have hypnotized him, and they turn him into, or you know, they say, you are now, because they hypnotize him, you are now Captain Underpants. And Captain Underpants is a character that they have created themselves about their principal, and Captain Underpants is able to stop bad guys and save the world, and so they've turned him into a superhero. And I think that's so funny, and their principal's like ridiculous and super mean, but that's the gist of the books. So we have the 2 boys and Captain Underpants, and in every single book they need him in order to defeat the bad guys, and the bad guys are always some teacher or other kind of character that is upset at the boys because they've done something to them, and everybody's always wanting revenge. Like, that's like the main thing, is the bad guys want revenge. So in this particular book, we have the 8th one, and this is called Captain Underpants and the Preposterous Plight of the Purple Potty People. This one I really liked because it stars George and Harold's grandparents, which I think is really funny. What are their names? Let me see if I can find it in the chapter. By the way, in every single book, there is a comic-like section where it's phonetically accurate. So it looks just like a 4th grader wrote it, like escaped. You see how it's spelt wrong? So they're showing you what a 4th grader, how they would spell it phonetically. But no, that's Captain Underpants. He's running out. So they do have a really nice recap each book to let you know what happened in the previous one in case you forgot. I just really like the little like recaps. Each chapter is super cute. I love the illustrations. They have a bionic squirrel and a pterodactyl in this one that they brought back from the past, which is really funny. But anyways, where is the grandparents? Because they call themselves something which I think is so funny. The purple potty is what they were using as a time traveling unit. Kind of like, ooh, I'm going to hurt people's feelings so they don't know it. The TARDIS? The TARDIS. It's kind of like the TARDIS, but it's a porta potty instead of a telephone booth. Anyways, where is the oh, here's the grandparents. Here's Grandma and Grandpa. Where are they at? There's Grandma and Grandpa on that page. But they call themselves, here we go, Boxer Boy and the Great Granny Girdle. And they help save the day. I love that the grandparents kind of like the parents don't know anything about George and Harold's comic books, or about how they have always gone on these like really elaborate adventures where they're trying to stop bad guys with Captain Underpants. But the grandparents kind of have an inkling, and then so I like that they are involved and they become superheroes as well. All right, now we are on to the 9th book. This is the largest book in the entire series, and this one was my favorite. This is the only 5-star I gave for all the books. And by the way, I don't want to open up my Goodreads. I am sitting in my hallway where my red books are, and so I will leave all of the names of these books down below, and I will leave my rating next to each one. But this one, I remember, was my only 5-star, and the reason being is that it was just so complete. There's 2 stories going on in this one. George and Harold are trying to save themselves. They were supposed to go to jail, and then they're fighting Professor Poopy Pants, who was in jail because of them, from, I think it's book 2 or 3. But this one is called Captain Underpants and the Terrifying Return of the Tippy Tinkle Trousers. So Professor Poopy Pants thought that it would be a good idea to change his name, but because he doesn't have like a humor bone in his body, so Poopy Pants, he couldn't understand why that was funny, and of course poop humor is funny, so he decided to call himself Tippy Tinkle Trousers instead, and that's P. So it's like, it's really funny that he just didn't get it. But anywho, so there's 2 stories going along within this book, and it's funny because at one point I forgot while I was reading it that there was a first part, and they were trying to get back from being in jail. And so they have a lot of stuff going on in here. I think this is when there's 2 of them. Is that right? It talks about Dogman in this one as well. Oh, that's right. Here's the bad guy. This boy picks on them all the time, and they've come out with an elaborate scheme where they're going to put things in his locker, like ghosty things, so he thinks he's being haunted. And they wear all these big fat clothes. Yeah, it's so funny. I really liked this one. This is definitely something that you could reread over and over again. It's just really funny. I don't know. Whatever. Okay, and then the 10th one is Captain Underpants and the Revolting Revenge of the Radioactive Robo-Boxers. Again, we have Tippy Tinkle Trousers in it. He's trying to seek revenge on the boys and Captain Underpants for putting him in jail and always stopping him from being able to take over the world. And then this one is Captain Underpants and the Tyrannical Retaliation of the Turbo Toilet 2000. Now again, that just shows you the vocab. Retaliation is a pretty big word. It's a pretty big vocabulary word. Tyrannical, nobody uses those kinds of words, but your child will be able to learn some pretty big vocabulary using this. Not only is it the vocab good, but there's a lot of science within these books, and it talks about time travel and wormholes and more things like that. And then the very last book is And the Sensational Saga of Sir Stinks-a-Lot. Sir Stinks-a-Lot is the very last villain. I thought that this one was the least. I think the first book was a little bit okay-ish. I gave that one a 3-star, and I think I gave this one also a 3-star. All of the books get better throughout the series, and then once you hit the 9th book, then they start trickling down again. So the 9th is the pinnacle, and then it's like a 4, 4, a 3, a 3, and then this is the final one. Didn't really enjoy this one. I thought the villain was a little cheesy, and I didn't really enjoy the ending. It had to end. I'm so bummed that the 11 and 12 aren't in color. They don't have color ones yet, but I just didn't really like the conclusion of the series. It kind of was a happy ending. Not that I didn't, it's a kid's book, so obviously it needs to have some kind of like happy ending wrap up. But it was kind of quick. It would have been cool if it was more on the length of like book 9, but you see how skinny this is? He kind of just like stopped writing Captain Underpants for the Dogman books. So here's all the Dogman books. Yes, even though I wasn't reading for myself or my personal enjoyment, I was reading to my children every night these books, and they thought it was hilarious. And of course I did. Kid voices and villain voices and everything in between. Now, Dogman, I am not a big fan of this series. I think it's just okay. If you're gonna read anything from Dave Pilkey, I would stick to the Captain Underpants books. These are, if Captain Underpants is like 4th through 6th grade, and when I say 6th grade, I know there is a huge difference in 6th graders. You might have 6th graders that are very teenage-like, you know, they got iPhones and they're always on social media and they've like lost their innocence of children. Then maybe Captain Underpants would be like embarrassing for them to read. They wouldn't have to read it like at school. But 5th grade in elementary school, all the kids are reading Captain Underpants, so it's not an embarrassing thing for them. But the vocab is still really good for beginning 6th grade. Dogman, however, this is more of a like 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade kind of read. And so I did talk about the very first Dogman books last year, and then I read the rest that they have out so far. There's a new one coming out. I think it's book 9 or maybe 10. That won't be coming out until September of this year, so of course I'll buy that one and read that one. But so we have Dogman here, and each time you start the book, just like in Captain Underpants, George and Harold tell you a little bit about what happened at the beginning of the book. Now the first 2 books, the first 2 books, you have Dogman 1 that just introduces you to Dogman, and then you have Dogman Unleashed that kind of like, again, is more or less introducing you or continuing to introduce you to Dogman and the villains of the story. The villains kind of stay the same in every single book, but then what's cool is that they start following classics. So there's it's like a retelling of a classic, but in a very kid-like way. So this one is called Unleashed. Like I said, Dogman is a police dog. He used to be human. Well, there was a human police officer and then a dog police, a police dog, and they both got into a accident. I don't know if it was like an explosion or something. I always forget why they were broken like that. So they're both in the hospital and they're both dying. The body is dying on the dog and the head is dying on the human, and so the nurse says, why don't we sew them together? And that's how they become Dogman. Now there are two cats in this book. One is Big Petey, and he is our main villain of the entire series. And in this book, he decides that he wants to create a clone of himself, so that the way there's 2 evil cats going on throughout the books. But come to find out, little Petey doesn't want to have anything to do with evil. He's a sweet cat, and so he doesn't want to do that. And instead, Big Petey decides that, well, I'm just going to try to get rid of you then. I'm going to sell you. And he ends up little Petey ends up getting picked up by Dogman, and he like kind of like adopts the baby cat, and they become friends. And then the whole series, Big Petey's trying to get little Petey to be evil, and little Petey's continuously saying, you know, evil's not okay, you should be good, everyone should be good. So I guess there's a nice moral. He's like, it doesn't matter how evil you are, you can always change for the better if you try. So that is cute. And this one was okay. And then we have A Tale of Two Kitties. Now I'm not going to describe all of these books because literally they're all about the same. Big Petey is always getting picked up in these books and getting sent back to jail, to cat jail. So there's nothing really to talk about. It's just like, you know, it's just a fun read. Not as good, like I said, not as good as Captain Underpants, but it's fun for little kids. Big Petey and Little Petey. So A Tale of Two Kitties. Oh, that's what I wanted to say. At the beginning, George and Harold says that their English teacher has made them read classics and they didn't want to. But then they found out after reading it that the stories are really cool. And that's why they've written their comics according to that kind of plot. So we have A Tale of Two Kitties. And then we have this one here, which is Dogman and Cat Kid. Now this has nothing to do with classics, but Little Petey has made Dogman a costume, and this is when they get Robo HD. What is the robot's name? I forgot. There's a lot of characters in here that stay the same too. There's Chief, who's best friends, or he's the chief of police, and so he's always looking after Dogman. And then there is the reporter that's in every single one as well. This is about a movie that is going to be made about Dogman and the shenanigans that happens with that one. And then we have Dogman, Lord of the Fleas, so another classic that they talk about. And then there's Brawl of the Wild, you know, Call of the Wild. And For Whom the Ball Rolls instead of the bell tolls. And then lastly, they have Fetch 22, which has the bionic Flippy, the evil bionic Flippy, who is also being manipulated to be good by Little Petey. Yeah, I really like Dave Pilkey and what he stands for. If you read his, does it have it in this one? Let me check really quick. I know this is really long and super boring. I told you I was going to make sure that I have the timestamp down below so you guys can skip all of these kid books. But it does talk about Dave Pilkey in the back of the books where it talks about the author. It talks about how he had ADHD and he was dyslexic. And so it helps children identify with someone like them. So if your kids have ADHD or have a hard time reading, they will, find themselves in the author, which I really like. And the fact that at the back of the books for Dogman, it teaches you how to draw the characters, which I've done loads of times with my child. It's just really fun to create the characters from the books. ADHD, that's the name of the robot. So yeah, we do that all the time. And then the last Dave Pilkey book that I read this year is The Adventures of Super Baby, or Super Diaper Baby. And this is the first book in the Super Diaper Baby series. There's only 2, I think, and then there's one other spin-off that has to deal with cavemen. I don't own the Caveman or Diaper Baby 2. I don't like this one. I thought this one was super boring. It's got, the same kinds of drawings, but this one was all about poop, And like I said, I like poop humor, but this just was really bleh. So, I would highly recommend Captain Underpants for 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th graders. And I would recommend Dogman for maybe 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade. I don't know who would want to read this. Maybe 1st graders. I just didn't like that kind of humor. And my kids didn't like react in a good way towards the Diaper Baby one. So I probably won't continue buying those ones, but I will get the latest for Dogman. All right, now here's the time step. So we're at about 30 minutes where we did the intro and just kid books. Now on to all of the rest of the books that I have read since January. So I mostly read graphic novels and manga, just because I've been trying to pick up quick reads to, you know, so I can do other things. Since this quarantine, the kids have been home for, what, 4 weeks now? Or at least, yeah, a little over 4 weeks now. I've been making them do school at home. I gave them 2 weeks off and then 2 weeks on. And then, of course, this following week that's coming up on the 14th, they actually go back to school via Google Classrooms. And so I will be extremely busy with school. So I wanted to get a lot of graphic novels read because those are quick. Those are things that I can read in like an hour or so in between teaching the kids or, you know, making food or cleaning or what have you. So I started off with Twilight, the director's notebook. This is the story of how we made the movie based on the novel by Stephanie Meyer, and this is written by Catherine Hardwicke, right? Hardwicke. Now, it's been many years, and if you are still butthurt about Twilight, you need to stop. It's been over and done with. Twilight was an amazing book series. Was it revolutionary? No. Was it literary? No. Was it super fun to read? Absolutely. Were the movies just as entertaining and cheesy as the books? Absolutely. There is value in reading cheese and watching cheese. That's why there's, you know, B movies. It's fun. You don't have to take everything so seriously. So when I bought this, I was really excited because it's kind of like from page to screen kind of thing. And so there are pictures of like where the director got her ideas from. There's pictures of where they were scouting for where they were going to film. There's like little just notes from the author. Here we go. So basically, that it's a notebook of her experience as the director, and I found it fascinating. I liked it. If you liked Twilight, you know, there's no other ones for the rest of the movies because those were all male directors, and I'm sure people were starting to slowly not care about what the directors thought. Although I have listened to all the commentary on all of the movies because I'm that kind of nerd for Twilight. So this was fun. I think I gave it like 3 stars. Again, all my ratings will be down in the description box because there's too many books for me to remember what I gave them. This was just, you know, an entertaining like 30-minute read. And then I picked up The Gigantic Beard That Was Evil by Stephen Collins. This was a big deal on BookTube many years ago. I didn't know why everyone was raving about it, and I bought it a long time ago too, and then finally just pulled it off my shelf and finally read it. It says a New York Times bestseller, and if I had to describe this book, here's just, you know, some of the panels. It's all in black and white. If I had to describe this book would be an art, you know, like if you watch an art film and it's like you don't know what's going on, but it's artistic. You know what I mean? That's what this is. This is just an art graphic novel. It's about a world where everything is the same. Everybody has the same haircut. Everybody follows the same path to go to work. Everybody eats the same meal every day. And this man never strays. He wakes up. He does the same thing. He goes to work. He gets off. He comes home. And he sits and he looks out the window and he draws what he sees. In this book, you are not allowed to be unique or different, because standing out is not okay in this world. One second. And so we just follow this man. One day, I'll show you the picture. One day he wakes up and he's like some kind of mapping. He does scatter plots and other kinds of charts. I don't know what his job entails, but that's what he does. And he has like this little curl that is on his mouth. See that? This little curl right here. And it just happens. Now everyone is supposed to shave. They're not allowed to have facial hair in this world. And the curl comes back and he's like freaking out. And then one day the curl gets longer. You see that? And he gets sent to jail because people are thinking, you know, that he is being obscene, that he's not following protocol, that, you know, he is doing this on purpose to create havoc in their world and cause attention to himself. And then pretty soon, it's a full-blown beard. Now the beard's just taking over, and now he's a super spectacle of the town. And there are people trying to help him. He's tried to cut the beard, and it doesn't work. And then it grows out of control. He's on the news. People are saying, hey, we need to keep them away from the rest of society because people are going to start having ideas, and we don't want our children to think it's okay to break the rules and have, you know, ideas. Like everybody has to be uniform and equal and everybody's the same. And the beard goes on and on and on. And now he's a threat to society because people can't understand that this is kind of like a medical condition. He's not choosing to grow this beard. It's just coming out of him. And they're not willing to have this spectacle. So they decide that they're going to get rid of him. And I won't say how the ending goes, but it's kind of sad. And I mean, it is a parallel to our society. You know, there's a lot of people who are the straight and narrow and they follow the rules. And then there's those that don't, and they try to lash out and be different or unique, but there's a backfire sometimes to that. And so, I don't know. It's kind of like a parallel to our world. I think that's why people really liked it back when it first came out. I don't know. I thought it was okay. I'm not going to keep it. It's not something that I will reread, so this will definitely go in the trade away pile. By the way, I do have like 12 books that are in my trade away right now. And I know that the post office is open, but I don't want to put the postal workers, you know, in jeopardy. And I don't want to go into public and might contaminate, you know, myself or others just to push, you know, like to post books for you guys. Although it would be wonderful to get these books in the mail and to have some love like that. I don't feel like it's safe, and it's selfish on my part to go to the post office for non-essential things. So once this whole quarantine is done, I will then do my trade away giveaway, and I will share all those books with you guys. But yes, this book will be included in that pile of books. And then we have the Book of Bunny Suicides. This is by Andy Riley. I got this in a book outlet box randomly. Like, it's such a skinny graphic novel. I don't even know how it got in there. It must have fallen in there. They slipped it in there by mistake. This is the one and only thing that I've gotten from Book Outlet that I did not order. And it's just funny that I got it. Now, this took a whole maybe 15 minutes to read, but each page is, you know I never do these stupid things. Each page is a way that this bunny is going to kill himself. It's very morbid, and I thought it was hilarious, but after a while it gets tedious because it's just the same bunny trying to kill himself over and over again. So we have a guillotine, we have him taking a balloon ride up and being stabbed in the middle of his body by a jet. We have just random stuff. This one, he's trying to wait for stalagmites or mites. I never can remember which one's on the top, to fall on him. And you see how they're kind of cracked, but they haven't actually fallen on him yet. So basically, there's that. Again, not something I would reread. I think I'll be putting this in the trade away as well if my older son doesn't want to give it to one of his friends, because I think he said he wanted to pass this along to his girlfriend. But I don't, I don't know. I think it might be a little bit too morbid. Her mom might be like, no thanks, not in my house. So I think I might just give this away to you guys. The next graphic novel that I read was The Undertaking of Lily Chen by Danica Novgorodov. Ooh, I did that really bad. Again, this is another graphic novel from First Second Publishing. That was all the rage back in like 2015, 2016. Everybody was reading this. This was on a lot of people's TBRs or book hauls, and I bought it with everybody else, and I never read it. And I finally picked it up. Now, the artwork in here is very colorful. It's about a boy who, him and his brother are fighting at the beginning of the story. He used to be, our main character used to be in the military, and his brother's supposed to be this big shot college kid, and their family dynamic, the older one is supposed to take over the family business, and the older son doesn't really want to do that. And the younger son goes into the military because he doesn't have the smarts that his older brother does. But something happens and the older brother dies, and the parents are very upset. Now, this is an Asian culture, so they are saying that he's a disgrace to the family, and in order for him to be back on their good graces, he needs to go and find a bride for his brother. And I don't remember if this is Chinese or not. Yeah, in the mountains of northern China, ancient custom demands that every man have a wife to keep him company in the afterlife. So he's supposed to be looking for a corpse, preferably a juicier one than bones, to keep his brother company. And he has like a week in order to do this. And the parents have given him money to hire a gravedigger to help him find a good fit for his brother. And then they'll be buried together, and then they'll like have like a marriage ceremony. And it takes the youngest brother a long time to get what he wants. I just found it to be an okay story. It wasn't all that great in my eyes. So again, this is something that I won't be keeping on my shelves, that I will be handing over to you guys. So if you guys were interested in this back in the day and just never purchased it and are still interested in reading it, maybe you guys will like it more. Again, the illustrations are really nice, but I just, it's not something, once you read it, it's not something you're gonna reread, or maybe you will. I don't know. It's just not my style of graphic novels, so I won't be keeping it. The next thing I have here is the conclusion of I Hate Fairyland. There are only 4 books in the series. I read the first one ages ago, and I bought the second one finally from Amazon because they were having, it was a little bit cheaper than it was usually put up for, and so I picked it up at like $12, and it used to be like $16, something like that. I try, and you guys know this, I try to be cheap with my books because I have so many. I would much rather buy a book for $1 if I can. I don't like spending full price on a book because sometimes I keep them and sometimes I don't. This series I'm definitely keeping. I mean, the color the panels are incredible. I can see myself rereading this over and over and over again, only because our main character is so sassy. I just love her sass, and I love this world. So if you guys have never read I Hate Fairyland before, we have our main character. I think her name's Gertie. Yeah, she goes by Gert. Now, Gertie's a little girl at the beginning in the first book. She's like 7 or 8, I think. And she falls through a hole in her floor in her bedroom and lands in Fairyland. Now, in order to leave Fairyland to go back home, you have to go on this really elaborate quest. And each time you meet a character from Fairyland and you do what they ask, they give you a quest, and you finish the quest, they give you something in return, like a key or a lock or some kind of item that is used to unlock the next quest in the chain. So for instance, say I have a cookie, and the quest is to go and give this cookie to, say, a giant, and then the giant will say, thank you, here's this, go give it back to this person. Once you've fulfilled the quest completely, you get something, and that then sends you to your second quest, and so on and so forth. But Gert's not very good at this, and whenever you are in Fairyland, you get a little sidekick. And is her sidekick on this picture? Where is her little buddy? Let me find her buddy, a picture. Maybe right here. You see her little buddy is kind of like a cricket. Like, he's a fly, but he's supposed to be like Jiminy Cricket, where he like gives her advice, like things that she's supposed to follow. And you have to go to school. These flies have to go to school to be a companion to humans that arrive in Fairyland. And it's like this prestigious thing, like everybody wants to be one, or the flies at least want to be one. They have to go to college to be this. And so he feels like he's letting her down because she's just not getting it. And it's been like 40 years. So now she's like a 30 or 40-year-old in an 8-year-old's body, and she's hella bitter. She hates Fairyland with a passion. She starts going on rampages. She's like the biggest killer they have, or the biggest villain they have. No one can defeat her. She's constantly killing like everyone, like a whole village of people, because she just doesn't care anymore. At first she was trying to be nice and like go along with it, but after so many years of being stuck and being lied to and never getting out of Fairyland and having to be on these continuous long quest lines, she's just given up. She doesn't care anymore. And so you follow her journey throughout all of the books. So this one is Fluff My Life. And in Fairyland you can't cuss. So I also found that very satisfying, because she's always saying fluff or other kinds of curse words that, you know, don't mean anything but are meant to be, you know, for her. Sadly, Never After is book 4. Oh, there is her fly. Again, just, it's so gorgeous. All of the things that she has to do. If you like really colorful graphic novels, you love fairy tale creatures, and you like, you know, bitter people, you know, going through stuff, then you'll like this. I found it hilarious, entertaining, fun. They were never boring. And this one is the last one. This is Good Girl, where she tries to turn things around. It's really cute. It's really cute. I just, like I said, I love, love, love this series. It's really funny. All the people. Oh, in this one, you learn all about her fly. Like, this is like his backstory, along with her trying to get to be a better person. Yeah. So, I really liked those ones. And then I finally finished Mind the Gap. This is volume 3 out of Bodies. I picked this graphic novel up a few years ago. It's about a coma patient. So there's a girl in here. I can't remember her name. What is her name? Ellie? I think it's Ellie. Elise is her full name, but they call her Ellie. So she has like this episode, and she's rushed to the hospital in the first book, and she's put into a coma because she's got some kind of head trauma. But there's like a secret going on in the background that her best friend finds out about. And so the best friend's trying to figure out what's going on. Her brother kind of knows. The mom's being secretive. Everything's going on. Nobody understands what's happening. There is a psychologist involved. And then the second book you realize, oh, hey, wait. She's in a coma on purpose. Like, there is this backstory where there's a conspiracy. Like she is being manipulated for some reason. And so her best friend's trying to figure that out. And then the second, part of this story is Ellie is in this coma-like state. If you guys have seen, I will look this one up with you guys, just because I don't want to mess up on the title of the movie. So it stars Reese Witherspoon. Let me see if I can find... here we go. Reese Witherspoon and the Hulk. I can't think of his name right now. The character that was in the Hulk. But this this movie that she was in with him is called some kind of, where she's also in a coma. Mark Ruffalo. Okay, so it reminds me a little bit of Just Like Heaven, that movie. I'll leave all that information down below if you want to watch it. But basically, our main character, Ellie, is in this coma, but she's her consciousness is almost like in a limbo or like a heaven kind of state. So she can talk to ghosts that are in the same parallel universe as her. And she can sometimes come out and possess people in the hospital and speak through them to kind of give her best friend information, which I found super fascinating. I really like the coma aspect. I like the fact that she can still think, but she can't physically wake up. And she's trying to get people to know what's happening to her on the outside. So I thought that was very fascinating. This, however, I thought this was going to be the last graphic novel in the series, and I was hoping to learn more information. It kind of ends on a cliffhanger where you're left going, wait, what happens next? They don't have a 4th volume. They have 2 more separate, what are these things called? Is it just comics? They're not volumes. What's the word I'm looking for? Anyways, this is supposed to be the 14th comic book thing, and then there's 2 more, and then the 2 more is the finale of this series. But I don't think I'll buy them in its single form. So with that being said, I do own books 1, 2, and 3, and I will be giving this away in my trade away. I can't see myself ever picking these back up. It's written by McCain Esquijo, Basri, and Mick Dade. If you liked Morning Glories, it's the same people, the same illustrators, so the people inside the illustrations of the people are similar. So if you liked that kind of illustrations, this is also the same illustrations. The same people wrote it. And so, yeah, I'll be giving away all 3 of those volumes, and then you guys can get the last 2 issues. That's it. That's what it's called. Not books, but issues. There's a 14 and a 15, I believe, out there, and I don't feel like buying them and figuring out what happens. So if you guys ever find out, or you want to tell me what happens if she's able to wake up from her coma, let me know down below. Or not down below, I apologize. Whew, that would have been spoilery for somebody else. But you can let me know on Instagram. DM me on Instagram. All right. Next, I have Bloody Chester. This is by J.T. Petty and Hilary Florido. I bought this from Book Outlet, I swear, like in 2014. This is another second published graphic novel. I love their graphic novels. They're amazing. This one was very odd. It was kind of like a short story. You know, when I complain a lot in my videos, and if you've been watching me over the years, you know I don't usually like a lot of short stories because sometimes there's a beginning, middle, and end, but normally you just jump right into the middle. You don't know what happened at the beginning or why you're there, or sometimes there's a beginning and a middle, but then the end kind of trickles off and you're like, wait, what happened at the end? And I hate those very ambiguous endings where you have to kind of decide what happened, and this has an ambiguous ending and it drives me crazy. I hate those kinds. So there's a boy named Chester Kate, and this is set in like a western town in America. It says the Old West. It doesn't say like a time frame, but Chester is a teenager. He's, I don't know, I want to say he's between like 16 and 19. He has a reputation of being a bad guy. I don't know what he did before he got to the town that we start reading him from. And when he arrives, the rumors have followed him as Bloody Chester. And so he's got like this ego when he walks into this new town and everyone's afraid of him and he's able to do things. And then finally they realize, or at least someone finds out what his last name really is, which is Kate. And then he's the laughing stock and nobody trusts him or nobody's scared of him anymore. And then Bloody Chester ends up being, because he gets beat up a lot, like he has no oomph. He can't beat anybody up. He can't protect himself. So he's kind of like a loser now. And finally one day, the head of the railroad company has an errand for him, and he says, I'll give you $40, 20 now, 20 later, if you go to this town up the ways where the railroad is supposed to go through, and if you just burn the entire town down, I'll give you $40. And since Chester's not making any money, he decides, sure, I'll go do that. And when he arrives, he was told there's nobody there. It's a ghost town, so it doesn't matter whether he burns the whole place down or not. When he arrives, there actually is a family living there, and he's trying to, you know, coax them to leave. But there's like this thing where the Indians are still like huge villains to the Old West. Americans, there's lots of fights going on, and so nobody trusts the Indians and vice versa. And there's a bit in here at the end where I'm like, oh, okay, so that's what that meant, because it says that his horse is named Chester, and that's what his name is. And the girl that he meets in this ghost town, she goes, why would you name your horse the same as you? That's very lame. And he goes, well, I didn't name it. An Indian named my horse. So that means that Chester has either lived among, befriended, or is an ally of, what have you, with the Indians. So it made a little bit more sense at the end, but the end was very like lackluster and kind of boring. So I am bummed that I saved this graphic novel for so long because it wasn't that great. I think I gave it 3 stars. So this will also be in a giveaway. All right, next I read Wraith. This is by Joe Hill and Charles Paul Wilson III. Now, if you have read Nosferatu, Nosferatu. Quickly, you know, if you say it fast, it's Nosferatu. If you have read Joe Hill's book, then you're going to love this graphic novel. I believe I gave this 4 stars. Again, you can look down below and figure out my ratings. But basically, this is the backstory to Charlie Manx to find out why he became the bad guy in Nosferatu. And it's really cool. I liked how all of the stories combined, like there was like a couple stories going on, but in the end they all came together and it made a lot more sense. The illustrations are pretty cool. We have, again, Charlie Manx. He has a family at the beginning. He buys this Wraith. His wife's really upset. He is told about Christmas Land. He buys into this idea of Christmas Land, and then it ends up being not what he expected. And then we have some people that are in jail, or they're being transferred from like one prison to the other. And so we follow their story, and like there's a police officer here that we follow her story. And then there's another guy. So at the very end of the book, there's like this rough paper. All of this is glossy magazine kind of paper. And then you have this rough, older kind of comic book paper where it feels like newspaper. And this is the story of another character that you meet at the beginning of the graphic novel. So I really like that you get the backstory of all these characters. I absolutely loved it. I highly recommend, if you have, you know, again, read and loved Nosferatu, to pick this one up if you're interested in learning more about the villains of the book. Because, you know, of course, in the Nosferatu novel, we're following our main character, which is the girl and her family and everything. Charlie Manx is the protagonist in the book, but we don't really care about his story. So the Wraith graphic novel is his story, which is really fun. All right, and then the last graphic novel I read, I received in a package from Quark Books. So this one I already talked about in my last video, which is my book haul video. So this is written by Cuddles and Rage. I think this is already out. It just says 2020. I don't know when this came out, but it obviously came out before I received it. So maybe January, February, maybe even March it might have come out. I'm not quite sure, but I really, really enjoyed this one. I talked about it in my book haul video. It's 10 short stories. If you are around my age and you grew up in the 80s and 90s, then you may know the HBO TV show called Tales from the Crypt, where there was a crypt keeper, a skeleton kind of creature that would talk to the audience and then tell them about the story that he's going to discuss. And each story started off kind of like with a comic book type of feel, and then it goes into the actual movie or TV show, because this is a series. A lot of fun. They were all very cheesy movies, and it kind of, that also reminds me of Who's Afraid of the Dark. Is that what it's called? From Nickelodeon. So it started off with Tales from the Crypt, and then Who's Afraid of the Dark came on Nickelodeon, which was similar, where it was little kids telling ghost stories, but they're short stories. So this is the same thing. There's 10 short stories in here. Instead of the crypt keeper, we have the cake keeper, or cake creeper, and we have a cupcake that comes into this home for shelter because it's raining, and he's waiting for the rain to stop so he can continue on his journey. But while he's there, the cake creeper says, well, let me tell you some stories. They're all very cute. I love that it's like claymation. It's very colorful. The stories aren't scary at all, but definitely entertaining. I will definitely be holding on to this. Very, very very fun to read. And then the very last two graphic novel-y type of things that I read, I know I said that was my last graphic novel. These ones are mangas. So we have Prison School #1 and Prison School #2. Now it says here, parental warning, okay, explicit content. And it does have explicit content. I'm not sure why Asian mangas, in the books and in the anime, the women are so busty. Like, what is up with the big boobs? Not all girls look like that. And the bigger the boob, the better in all of these stories and in the animes. It's like, ugh, that's not what a girl's body looks like. Give me a break. But I had a subscriber, a boy subscriber, years and years and years ago, tell me that I needed to pick this manga up because I was reading a lot of horror manga at the time. And so I added it to my Amazon wish list. And Sylvia, I will leave her channel link down below. She does a lot of like negative videos. I don't want to poop on Sylvia. She's a great person, but I don't like that kind of content where she rips books apart instead of praising books. I usually don't talk about how much I hate a book. I usually try to pick out things that I like about a book or let you know, hey, this wasn't my cup of tea, but you might like it, whereas a lot of her things, she destroys the book. But she's the one who created the wrapping paper of books. So if you've seen other booktubers do that where they've wrapped their TBR, I thought that was phenomenal. What a great idea, because then lots of people were like, oh, I want to wrap my TBR too. So it was always a surprise when you pulled it off the shelf. Each genre of book was a different wrapping paper, so you knew when you pulled it off what kind of genre it would be, but you wouldn't know what it would be underneath because you don't see the cover. Long story short, she said she really enjoyed these mangas, and so she bought me my first one. And then it just sat on my floor with the rest of my graphic novels for like 3 years. So I finally decided to pick it up. Now, I know she said that it was kind of X-rated on the erotica side, and so I was like, ooh, all right. And it is very. So I want to show you a picture, but I don't want it to be too graphic, so let me find one. Here we go. Here is just, you know, a little bit of the manga. So basically what we have here, what we have here is an all-girls school. It's been an all-girls school for forever. And all of a sudden, they've decided to open up this all-girls school to 5 boys. I don't know how, I don't remember from the manga how these boys were selected, but they have been allowed in. But for some reason, this school has a shadow council that has been up and running for years and years and years and years. And why is there a shadow council with a president and a vice president and like a little bodyguard or what have you for this when boys weren't even allowed at the school? That is something I'm very confused on. If you guys have read this entire manga series, let me know down below why they even have the shadow council. Let's continue. So the 5 boys are there. The 5 boys are in this school and they're like, you know, like drooling over all of these girls that they get to see every day. And they decide that they're going to try to sneak a peek into the girls' bathhouse, like into their locker room or changing room. And I mean, we've seen that in American cinema or Western cinema tons of times where, you know, boys are always trying to sneak in or get a glimpse into the girls' locker room. So that's nothing new. But the boys get caught and then they are punished. Now for their punishment, they have to go to prison school. And again, why is there a prison on campus? That must have meant that at some point it used to be a co-ed school because no girls go to the prison. Anyways, the boys are sent to this prison, which is on campus, on their school property. And for 30 days, they have to do, you know, physical labor where they're cleaning up and beautifying the school. And then also they do their actual school studies via a TV where, you know, they're just watching the teacher do the lesson, and then they have to do the lesson by themselves. But right before they go into prison, our main character, Kiyoshi, is that his name? I think his name is Kiyoshi. I don't want to say it wrong. I mean, not that you guys even care, but I really, yeah, it's Kiyoshi. I enjoy knowing the characters that I talk about. So there's our main character, Kiyoshi, right here. And he ends up meeting a girl in his class, and they spark up a conversation on sumo. Now, don't get me started on sumo. When I was little, living in Hawaii, sumo was a big thing. My grandparents watched it. I watched tons of sumo. I knew all the guys' names. And this is like old school. This is like back in the early 90s when sumo was huge on Hawaiian television. So I could totally dig, you know, watching this on TV and having my favorite sumo wrestlers. So I understood what this girl was going through. She's like, I love this guy, and they're going to have a meet, and I really want you to come. And then so Kiyoshi's like, yeah, I'll come. But then he goes into prison, and he has to figure out a way to still meet up with this girl so they can have their date, right? And so if you, in the prison school, if you try to escape, that's another 30 days that gets tacked on to your sentence. And so in this entire book, Kiyoshi's trying to figure out a way to escape in order to go on his date. And like I said, it is explicit, not in a huge this is definitely not like Saga. Okay, Saga, you actually see the whole full frontal nudity. In this one, you don't see that kind of stuff. But it's still slightly vulgar. And so I wasn't interested in the illustrations, but I was interested in the story. I wanted to know if Kiyoshi gets out. So I went ahead and bought Prison School Volume 2. The president of the Shadow Council is a man-hater. She hates men. Everybody's a pervert. It's not a matter of there's some boys that are perverts. She's saying all men are perverts. And so in Volume 2, she's trying to figure out how to kick these boys out of the school. Like, just have them expelled completely so they don't have to worry about themselves anymore. They don't want to be looked at as objects. They don't want to be drooled over. She's upset at her father because her father also does this. So she's got, like, you know, baggage. And she's trying to create tension between the boys and the girls. And so she's making stuff up and trying to get them expelled. The thing is, again, I really enjoy the plot. The drawings are, you know, nice. I don't mind that. But some of the things in here, I'm like, ew, gross. I don't want to read any of that stuff. But anyways, what I'm trying to get at is, I like that this girl, even though it used to just be a girls' school, she always wears pants under her skirts. Because there's another character in here that's always flaunting her curves in a grotesque manner. I just found out that there are like 18 volumes of this, and it's a fast read. You can read this whole thing in about like an hour, maybe an hour and a half max. It's pretty quick, but I don't want to buy 18 volumes. I don't know how to finish this series without buying them. And they're all about between $12 and $17 per volume. So I did post this on Instagram. If you guys have this series at home, okay, once quarantine is over, if you would be oh so kind to send me the rest of the series so that way I can read them and then I will send them back to you, that would be phenomenal, because this is not something that's at my library. I can't, or I haven't really like looked that hard into like trying to find them online. I know that you can find some manga online for free. I don't know what those websites are called, and like I said, I haven't actually researched that kind of stuff. But if you have this series, please, please, please send it to me and I will send it back. I promise. I'm just borrowing them just so I can finish out. I want to know if the kids get out, like if they get expelled or not, but I don't want to spend the money on 17 books, and I don't have the shelf room for that. So I might actually, once I've finished the series, I'll probably just, you know, put these in a trade away. I don't need to keep them if I don't have the entire series. I don't need 2 books on my shelves for a series that, you know, that I won't reread. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. Whew, we are almost done. This is a very long movie. Movie? I don't make movies. I make videos. On to the actual books that I've read since January. And that's only 4. I know. It's so sad. Oh, so sad. So the first one is a classic, modern classic. It's Hunter S. Thompson, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Now, I've seen this movie several times starring Johnny Depp. I have read the graphic novel version of this off of NetGalley, which I loved. It's so good. This is such a good book because it's very visual. Like, you can see all of it. But I think this was when Hunter S. Thompson wrote this. I don't think he meant for it to be turned into a movie, but this needs to be watched, not necessarily read, because it gets a little redundant. So basically we have 2 characters. We have our main character. Why don't I know his name? He doesn't go by Hunter S. Thompson in the book, but I think this might be like semi-biographical. He calls himself something else. I can't remember. And then he has his lawyer, which he says is Samoan. This big Samoan guy. And so what they have is, sorry, I'm still trying to look for a stupid name. Okay, so we have 2 characters. We have the main character who is a journalist. He calls himself a gonzo, I think. A gonzo journalist. Am I saying that wrong? Maybe. The thing is that the main character, we don't know if anything that he's saying is truthful or not. This could be all made up. I don't know. Everything is so wild and out there, and he's like on major drugs the entire time, on lots of uppers and downers, like things that I've never even heard of, like lots of drugs. And so he gets this phone call. He's in like this bar or whatever with his attorney. And again, I don't even know if the attorney is real. Like, is he a real person? Is he actually an attorney? Is he actually his attorney? Or is he just a friend of his that they do things together? I have no idea. But basically, him and his attorney get a call from Rolling Stones or something. They say, hey, I want you to go down to Las Vegas and I want you to write a story about the dune buggy race that's going on there. And there's motorcycles and trucks and dune buggies and everything, but it's like this race out in the desert. And so they get sent there and they pack their convertible car with drugs and alcohol and guns and all this stuff, and they go down there and they wreck in Las Vegas. They're just all over the place, but again, it's so visual, and a lot of the times if you've seen the movie, reading the book is super funny because then you go back, you're like, oh yeah, I remember that part when he said that people look like alligators or reptiles. They're turning into reptiles. All very good. So if the movie is pretty much exactly like the story. So there's not that much that is different. So again, you don't necessarily need to read the book if you've already seen the movie because it's exactly the same. But I do like being, what's the word? completionist. That's what I am. I'm a completionist. I like to finish things in all forms. And so, yeah, I really wanted to read this. Did you even understand what this book is about? I don't even think I did the review justice. It's about a journalist, his attorney friend. There's shenanigans that happens while they're in Vegas. The drugs and everything that happens to them. They end up leaving Vegas without being arrested, and that was their goal. Although they have messed up 2 different hotel rooms. They haven't paid for anything. The credit cards are all, you know, overdrawn. They're all like bounced. Like none of their money works. I don't know how they continue to get cars and food and everything when they don't have an adequate credit card. But this is like back in the 80s, so maybe it was a lot more lax back then, whereas now, you know, you swipe it and they're like, denied. You know, you can't use it. But maybe back then they would take your information and not actually charge you until you were done with the hotel, and then they would find out that your credit card didn't work. So whatever. I enjoyed the book. I think I gave it 3.5 or 4 stars because I do think that it's a lot better in its visual form. All right, next is Come Tumbling Down by Shannon McGuire. Is this the 5th book? Oh, let me count. Where are all the books? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, this is the 5th book of the Wayward Children series. I absolutely love these tiny little books. They're super fast and easy to read. I love the fact that they follow different characters from the first novel. This one, Come Tumbling Down, is Jack and Jill, you know, from the nursery rhyme, Jack and Jill Come Tumbling Down. They follow their world in this one. So this book has been around for a while, at least since 2017 maybe. The Wayward Children, I've talked about this before. They all have their own worlds that they have gone to when they were little, and they've all been kicked out of these worlds for some reason or another, and they're trying to find these doors to get back into these worlds. Now, these worlds vary from person to person depending on their personality. Jack and Jill are twins. They come from parents that really didn't want kids, but they were using their children as like a status symbol, so that way they could blend in with the rest of their co-workers. Their co-workers would talk, you know, like I think the dad is like a lawyer or something, and he would go to work, or he works like in a big law, like not a law firm, but like a big business, like a CEO kind of thing, where, you know, he would have these dinner parties, and then his coworkers would talk about their kids, and he felt left out because he didn't have any, so him and his wife had some, even though they weren't children people. So Jack and Jill are not bred, molded, but that's a better word, molded to be certain people. Jack is molded to be more of a tomboy. Jill is bred to be, or molded to be, more dainty and ladylike. They wanted one of each, so that way the mom could dote on one and the dad could dote on the other. But the girls actually had the opposite interests. So Jill wanted to be the one that was very, or I mean, I'm probably saying the names wrong. I think it was Jack or Jacqueline. You know, I think Jacqueline was the one that was always the dainty, pretty one, but she wanted to be the dirty, tough kid. It doesn't really matter. Regardless, they're about 10 when they find their door, and they end up in the moors where it's run by monsters. So we have the vampires, we have the sea monsters, and then we have like the doctor who creates things like Frankenstein. Like he's able to bring bodies back from the dead, and he uses electricity to do all this. So the girls pick who they want to become in this new world, and then they find themselves not in their world anymore, and they're at this school for wayward children among other kids like themselves who have been cast out of their worlds and are trying to find their way back. So this is the conclusion of Jack and Jill. And again, this is the 5th book. I really hope that we continue on going into the characters from the 1st book, going into their worlds and finding out if they have happy endings or not. Some of the characters from the 1st book, we've already seen their progression and they've reached their conclusion, and we can be happy for them. They found their doors. But I can't wait to find out if the rest of the characters from the 1st book find their doors and have their happy ever after as well. Really, really enjoy it. Again, super short. They're all like novella length, about 180 pages or so. This one is 206 pages. Super fast reads. Love, love, love. And yeah, and the next thing, I definitely gave that one a 5-star. The next book I read was Chris Hadfield, An Astronaut's Guide to Life on Earth. This is his autobiography on how he became an astronaut. I gave this 5 million stars. If you haven't read this nonfiction, I highly, highly recommend it. It is so fascinating. He is such a smart man. There are so many quotes in here. When I read this, I started it when I was in New Zealand, and I was reading a little bit at my sister's house and then a little bit on the plane. I really wish I had taken notes on the quotes that I really liked, because there's so much information in here that would help you as an individual, you know, how to be a better team player, how to be more of a zero. And I liked that aspect in this book where he says there are people that are negative ones, zeros, and positive ones. Now, your goal is to be a 0, someone who works well with others, who doesn't take away from people, you know, succeeding, and also doesn't you know, get jealous when people do succeed. You always want to push people forward and help them better themselves. And in the process, people will see that and, you know, acknowledge you. You don't ever want to stand out in a bad way, because that makes you a negative one. If you're a positive one, that means you succeeded. You've done something amazing. People are giving you credit for it, but you need to be humble about it at the same time. When you become a positive one and then you gloat, people will then think you're a negative one. You know what I mean? So I really, really enjoyed the fact that he's such a team player. He had to do so much training to become an astronaut, more than I have ever expected an astronaut to have to do. They not only are pilots, but engineers. And just like when you are a nurse, you can take all these different certifications, and then it'll be like a registered nurse plus all these accolades, right? Like you'll have all these extra things that are added to your badge of certifications that you have. Same thing for astronauts. Like there's no particular thing that you have to follow to be an astronaut, except you have to be the top, the number one. But the more you add to your title, the more things that you are able to do, the more you're an asset to NASA. And I just found the whole thing fabulous. This so far, I would have to say, is my favorite book that I have read in 2020. I absolutely loved everything about it. I think Chris Hadfield is fascinating. His career progress, the way he's so humble, his love for science and adventure and the universe and his family is just all amazing. Absolutely loved. So I highly recommend that one. Wow. Long video, very long video. I will probably put lots of timestamps so that you can skip around, because this is insane. Okay. The very last book that I finished, this actually was finished in March, right? Or maybe it was just a couple days ago. This quarantine's making me lose track of time. I don't know what day it is sometimes. I don't know what's going on. But anyways, I received this from Celadon Books. So this is the ARC. This came out in February. I got sent this to review for, you know, like an honest review. They really wanted my input. And I have to say, this book really dragged me down. It didn't put me in a reading slump as in like I couldn't pick anything else up. It just put me in a reading slump as in I didn't want to pick this book up. It wasn't as interesting as I expected it to be. When they offered me this book, I read the synopsis. I heard that it was a murder mystery and it had two sisters in it, and you follow the sister that's alive and not the sister that has died, obviously, because the sister is dead. So you're just following the sister that lived her journey. And I really wanted to know how the sister died, what the murder mystery was. However, I feel really bad because Celadon did send this to me and I didn't get to review it in February for you guys. I'm 2 months late. But basically this is a contemporary, and it's like almost like a family drama, and it only focuses on the sister that's alive. We find out how the older sister died, but because nobody was there to witness it, not really, at least we don't have any conclusive evidence on how she died. We get left in that like limbo along with the sister. We just don't know what the actual truth is to this story. So we start off on a beach called St. X, kind of like, you know, any other island in the Caribbean. And they're on a family trip. They are well off. I've never gone on a holiday or a vacation with my family. I grew up very, very poor. So there was no like every year we went to a tropical island, or every year we went to a ski resort, or every year we did some kind of international traveling. There's a lot of people out there that do that. I, for one, have never been one of those people, so I can't relate to the main character. So we have this family. They're on St. X. The mom and dad are pretty oblivious. They're your standard white American family, you know, moderately wealthy. They have like a house in the suburbs and cars and whatnot. They can afford stuff like these trips. They're not starving for money. You know, they're pretty comfortable. And then we have the two sisters. Now, one sister's 7, and that's our main character of the story. Her name is Claire. She's 7 at the time, and her older sister, Allison, is 18, and she's in her first year of college. Now, the sister, you find out throughout the book that the sister is on the fence of her status in life. Like, she doesn't like the fact that she hasn't had to struggle. She doesn't like the fact that she's different than other people in the world. Like, she has a pretty lush life, and so she kind of rebels. So she gets into, you know, a lot of things that aren't necessarily good. You know, she does a lot of drinking. She's kind of promiscuous, or at least she pretends to be. She goes out of her way to create these dangers because she feels that her life is so sheltered and tame and boring and typical of your average, you know, semi-wealthy white family in America. And she doesn't like that. But at the same time, she feels gross because she doesn't know if she enjoys her life or if she's upset because she has privileges. So it's all very confusing. I mean, she is only 18, but she's trying to find herself. And they go on this trip and she dies. Now, the people that are are accused of murdering her. We find out, you know, in the first chapter that there's no evidence, there's no hard evidence that they have committed a crime. But now that they have been on the news and they've had this stuff surrounding them, there's a stigma. And so one of our characters that was in, you know, as a suspect, he stays on the island. The other one can't handle the fact that he's scrutinized every day, so he decides to move to New York. The family is very upset at the death of their oldest daughter, and they decide that they're going to move from, I think they used to live in New York, or maybe somewhere in the Midwest, and then they moved to California to kind of like renew their family and turn a new leaf and like live a new life without their older daughter. So Claire grows up with like a resentment that her sister left her too young, that her parents are kind of like blowing off the fact that her sister is dead, that they don't talk about her sister. She has all these like anxieties, and she feels like she's in the shadow of her dead sister and she can't flourish on her own as her own person. And she really hates her parents because she feels like they've forgotten about her sister. Or have pretended that she didn't have an older sister. Like, they've packed everything up, they don't talk about her, she's like a secret. And Claire was so little when this happened that she doesn't understand their feelings and what they're going through. And she doesn't have children, so that's one of the things we try to teach, like, our kids. Like, you don't know what death is until you have your own children, and then you realize, oh my gosh, like, that is something major. Like, you don't, you know. So I could definitely feel what the parents were going through. Not that they wanted to secret away her older sister, but that it was too precious of the memories of the sister. They didn't want to delve into sadness with her being gone. So I get that part. So when we finally meet Claire again in the book, which is like chapter 2 or 3, she's 30 something and she's living in New York and she's working for a publishing house, which I always like reading about people who work with books because that's something I definitely would have liked to do when I was younger. That wasn't something I knew about when I went into college, so too bad. I would have loved to be like an editor or, you know, someone who works in the book world rather than just reading the books. Like, just being around books every day makes me happy. So that would have been a cool career choice. But that's what Claire's doing. She's working for the publishing company. And she is in a taxi cab one day, and the man, you know, asks, where do you want to go? And she looks to the front and she sees a picture and his name. She is very familiar and she remembers, oh my gosh, this is the guy that worked on Saint X. This is the guy that was, you know, involved in my sister's murder. Like, he was a suspect. And so this whole book, she's trying to she plans on not getting revenge, but seeking the truth from this guy. But their lives intertwine, and she's downward spiraling, and he's, you know, dredging up old thoughts, and it's basically their story, Gogo and hers, and what happened that last night on the island, and how her sister died, and how they're going to overcome the fact that Allison is dead. Because, you know, Gogo, our main character, or the main suspect, Allison also affected him. You know, we find out that he either killed her or not, but her death affected his entire life, just as Allison's death affected Claire's life. Like, everything that she did growing up, she always had that in the back of her mind, that she was trying to be like her sister or outshine her sister. So it was a good story. I don't want to say it wasn't, but it's not it's not what I thought it was going to be. So it was a real bummer when I was reading it, because I was trying to get into the juicy bits, like how did she die? Who was her killer? That's the kind of thing I wanted to have, the murder mystery come out, and that never happened. And so I was really bummed. But if you like contemporary books, if you like the not like family dramas or like life in general, if you like stories of people and the way they deal with grief, or the way they deal with anger and emotions in their lives and how they overcome things, then you're going to really like this book, because that's basically all that happens in this story. And that's why it kind of dragged for me, because although it was an amazing book, this is her debut novel. I didn't even say who it's by. Alexis Sakhakin? S-C-H is ska, right? Like school? Skatikin? I'm sorry. I don't know. I would definitely recommend this book, but just know that it's not a murder mystery. That's not its sole purpose. Its sole purpose is to tell a story of two sisters and the love and bond that the two sisters had when both were alive, and the effects that happened after death, like what the younger sister dealt with growing up with this grief. So that's what that book's about. And that's the last one that I finished so far. A few weeks back, I posted a TBR on my Instagram, things that I was currently wanting to read. I'm still slowly going through those books. I had 8, and I thought, oh, I'm in quarantine. I'll have all the time in the world to read books that I'll be able to finish 8 books in a week. No, that's silly. So let me just go over those really quick with you. I'm not going to do any reviews. I'm just going to kind of tell you what the titles are and how far I'm in and whether or not I'm liking it. So the first one I have is Social Suicide by Gemma Halliday. This is the sequel to Deadly Cool. Here's the book here. I really enjoy Deadly Cool. This book is with the same person. We have our main character. What is her name? I hate not knowing. Sydney? No, that's not her name. Ugh, I guess it doesn't matter. I'm sorry. Hartley. I just want to know when I'm talking. So we follow Hartley. In Deadly Cool, she is actually trying to solve a murder. See, I like solving murders. And then this is like the next year in school. She's going about her normal teenage life, and she comes across another dead teenager from her school, and she's gonna try to figure out how that happened. What I like about these two books is the fact that Hartley is a good girl. A lot of the times you read these teen books and there's a lot of drinking and bad things, and there's no parents in the stories. You're like, where is the parents? There's no like loving mom or dad at home taking care of these kids. They're just running amok all by themselves. There's partying. There's like, it's very heavy on like rape or drama, or these girls are like crying that the cute boy doesn't like them, and then they like try to make themselves different in order for these boys to like. That's not what Hartley and her best friend Sam is all about. They're all about school, and they're all about solving murders, kind of like, Scooby-Doo. I really, really, really enjoy these books. Highly recommend if you just want some really easy YA fluff read. They're very endearing. I absolutely love these two characters. I can relate to them because I was a goody-goody in high school as well. And so, yeah, I'm enjoying it. I haven't finished it yet. I'm currently on chapter 4, and the font is really big, so it's a really fast read. I just haven't sat down and like read it. I wanted to kind of read all of these a little bit of like 30 pages every single day, but I've been doing Animal Crossing and school and everything else, so I just pick them up whenever I want to. Next I have Dead Indian Wars. This is a paranormal Western. I talked about this author last year. It's Clark Casey. He sent this to me because I really enjoyed his first book. I already reviewed his first book, which is Dawn and Damnation. I thought it was amazing. Basically, I don't know if there's going to be a third, but this is the sequel. Basically, we are in Damnation, which is a purgatory for people in like the Western time frame in the United States. So there's people that worked on the railroad, and there's, you know, cowboys, like bad guys that, you know, killed people or robbed banks or what have you. And then there just so happens to be in this purgatory a vampire. And there's also werewolves in this story, and sometimes the clouds get crazy and there's rain, or the sun will come down kind of like a god and like smite somebody. It's all very, very interesting. I really, really enjoyed the first book. There was a pregnant lady that died on her wedding day, and she was pregnant, and the baby ended up being born, which is something that's never happened before because they're all dead. So how did she have this live baby? So there's a live baby in the last book. That might be a little bit of a spoiler, but I don't even know if you'll read the first one, so who cares? So I just started this one. I'm only on chapter 2, and this one evolves the main characters, mainly the vampire. He had a very small part in the first book, but I think that the second book he's going to be more of a main character, and like how he became, or how he got to be here in Damnation, this purgatory. And in the first book, if you killed somebody, you went straight to hell. So their main goal is to stay in Damnation without killing anyone, so that way they can go to heaven. But no one's ever tested it. No one's ever been like picked up by God and said, you no longer need to be in Damnation. You can now go to heaven. You've been a good soul. But the journalist that writes everything about these people, he hasn't killed anyone for like 3 years or something. Maybe I'm like really off. Maybe it was only like 30 days. I don't know how long this guy's been there, but he hasn't killed anybody. And so he's trying to like keep a record of how long he hasn't killed someone, so that way he can go to heaven. It's all very random, and I never thought I'd like a Western, but I really, really, really like this book. All right, next is Goth, and this is by Otsuchi? Yes. This is translated, and the translator, does it even say who translated this book? No, I can't see it. I thought it was supposed to be like on the first page. No. Okay, so this is what I started on. I started reading this book a couple weeks ago, and I was enjoying it, but then I put it down for the other books, and I haven't picked it up since the first day I posted my TBR, which is really sad because this is a scary story. And now that it's been like 3 weeks since I picked this up, I don't know what this book is about anymore. It says, oh, that's right. Okay, I remembered. I just looked at the back a little bit. There's a boy and a girl that are in school together, and they come across this serial killer's journal, and it tells you where the serial killer has placed all of the bodies all the girls that he's killed, and they're all on these different mountains, and he's like cut them up into like tiny little pieces. He's left like nothing, but he has a very detailed thing on all of these girls. Like, he knows what their names are. He knows where they're buried or where they're scattered. He says exactly what he did, all in this journal, probably to go back and like reminisce and enjoy the fact that he killed these women. Now, again, the boy and the girl, the students from the school, they're very interested in murder and serial killers, and because they both have this love for this like morbid interest, they have become friends. And so when the girl finds the serial killer's notebook, they're really studying it. And then that girl is missing, and he thinks that the serial killer has kidnapped her, and so he has to like try to go through the notebook to figure out what mountains are left, and then like to see if his friend is dead or if he can save her or find her. And that's where I stopped. Very, very interesting. This isn't a very long book. I don't know why I put it, I know why I put it down, but I really want to like literally get back into it and finish reading it. It's less than 300 pages. So good. Loving it so far. And then I am reading Gwendy's Magic Feather. This is the sequel to Gwendy's Button Box. This is by Richard Chizmar. The first one was written with Stephen King. Stephen King started the Button Box and then never did anything with it. And then Chizmar's like, hey, I think I want to like add to your story. And so Stephen King's like, yeah, sure, I'll pull it out and you can add to it. And then he went and said, hey, I have this idea to talk about the girl from the Button Box as an adult and what would happen if she had the box again. And King's like, yeah, totally, go with it. I'm giving you my blessing. So basically that's just what this is. We start off with our main character from last time. I don't remember what her name is. This is a signed copy that I got from Cemetery Dance. I did pre-order this a while back. This came out in 2019, so I've had it for many months. But the font is huge. It's very easy to get through. And, oh, duh, the girl's name's Gwendy, obviously. So basically Gwendy works as a politician. I can't remember what her actual title is, but she comes across the Button Box again, and she doesn't know how it appears, because I think in the last book, and I don't remember if it just disappears on its own or if she hid it and forgot about it, but it reappears in this book, and she's trying to figure out what to do with this box and why she has it. And in the last one, she obsessed over somebody finding it, because the Button Box has these buttons on top, and if you push a certain colored button, that color coincides with a country, and you can cause a major catastrophe if you push this button, like an earthquake or a hurricane or some kind of thing will happen to that country that's pretty bad. So it's almost like she's playing God with this box. And then there's a black button that would like wipe out an entire country. Like that's like the last straw kind of button. And she was always afraid to touch that button because, you know, that's oblivion. You know, you would destroy everything. And to have that kind of power is scary. And when she got this box, she was like 12. So she had like this immense power and responsibility with this box. And now she's in her 30s and she has this stupid box again. She's like, oh no, now I have to worry about someone finding this box and possessing it and using it for evil. How am I going to, you know, keep this box safe and hidden and so forth? So I haven't gotten that far into this one. I'm only on chapter 21, which is page 95, but I am definitely enjoying it. And this is such a fast read. I mean, this is like a one sit kind of read. I just, you know, because I'm reading so many books, I haven't just sat down and read it in one sitting. All right, and then I have two more books. I have 20th Century Ghosts by Joe Hill. This is a collection of short stories that he has written. I started reading this with Penelope years ago during an October where we wanted to read this for Halloween. There are like 13 or 14 short stories in here. I have forgotten all of the short stories from the beginning. It's going to be difficult to review this because I'm going to have to skim all of the stories to get a gist of what everything's about, especially to write my review on Goodreads. But I'm currently on Last Breath, and I have to say I don't really enjoy his short story collections. He's not as good as his father in writing short stories, and I don't know why. I don't know what I don't like about them, but they don't seem very scary or relevant in my eyes. Hopefully I'll like the last ones. And again, I don't remember the beginning because I did pick this up about 2 or 3 years ago. But like I said, I'm a completionist. I want to finish the book. I don't like DNFing anything if I can help it. And so I think I have like 4 stories left to read before I finish this book. So we'll see about that. And then I have The Unthinkable, An Extraordinary Journey Through the World's Strangest Brains by Helen Thompson. This is a nonfiction. This woman is a journalist, and she goes and researches and interviews these people that have different brains. So the first person she interviews, which is called Bob, that's his name, he's able to never forget a moment in his life. And I think I've seen something on Facebook, not Facebook, on YouTube. I've watched like a BBC video on brains and how some people have the ability to remember everything that's happened to them in their entire life. It's very specific to themselves. They can't remember what happened to you, obviously, or like big events throughout the world, but they can remember what they had for breakfast when they were 4 in March on the 29th of whatever. They'll know the day, what the weather was like, what they were wearing, what they were talking about, what they ate. Like, they remember all that stuff, which can be very time-consuming for them personally, because then they are always thinking about that stuff. And with Bob, the main patient in this chapter, it didn't hinder his life, but there was a girl that she also interviewed where it did hinder it, because she couldn't sleep because her brain was always going over everything that she has ever done, all of her regrets, all of her the bad times. Like, she could never like reminisce about the good things. It was normally all of her worries and doubts and regrets and so forth. So that sounds tragic, and this is such a very interesting book. So I finished that chapter about Bob, and then I'm on Sharon right now. I'm only on page 57, but Sharon is permanently lost, which is so fascinating. So she has this thing in her brain where we all have a map in our heads, and I could visually tell you exactly what every house I ever lived in looked like walking through the door. I could tell you if you went to the left, it was, the kitchen. If you went to the right, it was the living room. There was a hallway in front of me. I have a visual space of what things look like, and that's how I can, find my way home. If I drive to someplace for the first time, I usually need Siri to get there, but then I don't need it to get back because I remember buildings or, whatever, the street names. I can remember things and find myself. So Sharon doesn't have the ability to do that. Something in her brain is missing, and there's lots of people, I can't say lots, there's a handful of people in the world that have this same thing happen where, they immediately get lost in places, and they have to find tricks in order to help them overcome their disability on not being able to remember that kind of stuff. Again, super fascinating. I cannot wait to finish this book. Now, this is the chunker that I've spent most of my time on, and that's why I haven't gotten to the shorter books, because House of Leaves by Mark Z. Danielewski is the epitome of interesting and obnoxious and all-consuming. Like, this book is beyond just anything I've ever read in my entire life. Look, do you see? I am not a tab kind of person. There are so many words in this book that I don't know what the definition is. When I read The Magicians by Lev Grossman, there was a lot of words in there that I didn't know, that I was constantly looking up. And I found it the story extremely good, but having to stop and look up all those words extremely obnoxious. Like, I didn't like the fact that it was so intellectual and I couldn't understand it. This is like that too, but it's in a way that I don't mind, because it's not necessarily a fiction. It's more like a research project, which is so bizarre. We have so many stories going on at once. The format is ridiculous. There's things that you have to look at that are just all over the place. Some pages are just footnotes, like hundreds and hundreds of footnotes. Some have these boxes in the middle that all of the writing is backwards or upside down. You have all this footnotes here. All of the names are upside down. You have some pages that are just completely empty, but it makes sense. This whole book is a riddle. Some pages are almost all empty. I cannot wait to finish this book and then not reread, but re-go through every single page and try to solve all of these riddles. There is Morse code in here. There's dots between things that I think is going to say something. There are words in here that are underlined for no reason, that I feel like if I start from the very beginning and then write down every single word that has been underlined, that it's going to say a message. There's so much stuff going on. So, okay, basically what this story is about, we have Johnny, who has a friend named Lude, who, you know, says, hey, there's this old guy that lives in my building that has died, and I think that you could possibly move into his place. And Johnny's looking for a place, so he's like, cool. But they don't clean out the apartment after the old man dies, and so he's left with all of his stuff. And one thing in particular is this trunk, and in this trunk is this book. It's all the research that happens. Now, the old man's called Zappano, and he has researched this thing over the years that's like literally taken over his entire life. Like, he's been researching and writing and footnoting and having people come in. And not only has he all done this, but Zappano is blind, so he's had to have translators come and read things for him and dictate and write things down. Super fascinating. I want to know all about Zappano. Now, Johnny is all about sex, drugs, and rock and roll, but now he's like obsessed with this story. Now, both of the two men are interested in the Navidson report, and that's our third story. What's the Navidson report? Well, there's this man named Navidson who used to be a photojournalist, and he moved into this house with his wife and 2 kids, and the house is very different. The dimensions of the house expand and contract, and they don't know how it's doing this. And Navidson has always been an adventurer, and so he goes into this hallway that ends up stretching out really far, and then he follows it, and then there's a spiral staircase, and he follows that, and he feels like he's getting lost, and he can't find his way back into the living room. And all of this happened. The house was perfect, normal when you walk inside, and one day this hallway appeared with this door, and that's when Navidson goes and like explores it. And during this exploration, he is videotaping all of this stuff, and he gets other people involved. His friend Reston, his brother Tom, 3 other men that come in that are going to help explore this weird dimension in his house with him. And things happen, which is really scary. A couple people die. Karen, the wife, can't handle it anymore. She's like, this house is haunted. I don't want to live here. And she takes the kids and she leaves to go live with her mom in New York. And Navidson is so obsessed with this house. He wants to know how it's doing this, why it's doing this. He's a photojournalist. He wants answers. And so he doesn't follow Karen to New York. He goes, I'll be there. But he goes and he continues to explore this house. And because there's been videos, you know, given out to the media and everything over the years from either Karen or Navidson. People have been speculating, researching, making dissertations, and actually like trying to solve or, you know, figure out what Navidson's mindset was, and interpreting these videos and the reports and everything. It's such a fascinating book. If the Chris Hadfield nonfiction was my favorite so far in 2020, this is my second favorite, just because it's so unique. It's so overwhelming. It's so intricate and invested. The footnotes, I want to know if these are all real. I'm assuming, you know, that because this is like a fiction, everything is fake. But the detail that Mark had to go through in order to create these footnotes and have these pages and have this, like, it's like empirical studies. Like, he's got so much going on in this story. It is insane. And I'm reading this out loud to my children, kind of like as a schooling, because it helps, you know, broaden your mind. But we are currently on chapter 15, 16, 18. We're currently on chapter 18. We are a little over halfway finished. My 15-year-old is like, Mom, I need to know what happens next. And so every night I read a chapter, or try to read a chapter. Sometimes chapters are really long, and the font is so small in this, and there's just so much. Sometimes I have to reread things. Sometimes I have to stop and make a note on a word that I don't know. There's so many words I don't know that it's just insane. Wow, now I'm gone. This is a 2-hour long video. Unreal. I'm going to have to edit this down somewhat. And the very, 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 very last book I am currently reading is Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, the illustrated edition. I'm reading it to my kids because I need a kid version besides House of Leaves, you know, every night. So I read House of Leaves a little bit, like an hour, and then I read Harry Potter for about 30 minutes, or I finish a chapter. We're currently on chapter 8. The Potions Master, Harry Potter, has just reached Hogwarts. I have read the entire series one full time, and I've read books 1 through 6 twice. I think I've read The Sorcerer's Stone. I think this is going on like my 4th or 5th time rereading the first book, but I'm really enjoying the illustrated edition. And so, yes, wow. Thank you so much if you stuck with me this entire video. It is very long. Again, there will be timestamps, although this is the end of the video, so if you lasted this long, you definitely deserve a pat on the back and a cheers to you. Thank you so much for sticking with me. I hope you guys are having a good weekend, that you enjoyed this extremely long video, that you are well and healthy, and that is it. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your weekend, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.